Hello everyone, it's the Black Shadow here. Hope you're keeping fairly well, and we have got big news for you coming hot off the press from Dire Wolf Digital. Announced just a matter of minutes ago. I have not been up particularly long. What a piece of news to wake up to, however. Dune Imperium Bloodlines, an expansion pack coming for both Dune Imperium Normal and as well as Uprising. I think it's more specifically tailored towards that. It is the final day for the Dune Imperium Championships over at Gen Con. It's the finals today. I believe we've got a member of our Discord server in Assets actually playing in the finals of that, so best of luck to them. But they've used the day to announce this new expansion, and they've only just released their official article on their website, which I'll be a link of in the description below. I find it really amusing that we did the update for our own channel about, 3 days ago it was, and myself and CJ, and we kind of speculated about an expansion coming, and I had said that, Direwolf had mentioned previously, and Paul Dennis mentioned previously, that he wasn't going to be doing any expansion stuff for Uprising in the short term, and I was like, well, we're out the short term now, we're in the medium term, it might not be that long that we hear something, and yeah, 3 days later, here we are with Bloodlines. I've got to say, though, my initial looking at this is really intrigued, and it looks really, really good. Let's go into this in a little bit more detail. So here's a look at the box art here, of course. Yeah, announced specifically at Gen Con. It is due to be in friendly local game stores in 2025. There is no other specification outside of that. So it's possible that maybe they could be targeting a February or March time. So a little bit of a way down the line. It's not like it's coming out next week. Which is quite interesting because it seems to be a fair amount of depth has already gone into it. So it's interesting that they're not getting released just yet, waiting until next year, however. The Great Houses of the Imperium live and die by their lineage. Plots unfold over generations, emperors build dynasties, and the Bene Gesserit weave prophecy into reality as alliances rise and fall. Leaders face a single question: how far will you go to secure your bloodline? Bloodlines expands both Dune Imperium and Uprising with powerful new tools to achieve victory. Recruit Star commanders to bolster your fighting force, unlock the potential of new tech tiles, new leaders, contracts, end cards, and more streets possibilities than ever before. War suits across the universe, and only the strongest bloodlines will survive. So here is the only image that is available for you of the general concept we're going to be looking at on the news article here, but there is plenty of interesting stuff. Here's a list of the stuff coming out here. A total of 9 new leaders coming out for the game, which is a lot, truth be told. And we do have some images of some of the leaders here. It looks like quite a few of the leaders have their own kind of specific mechanics tied specifically to them. Makes them quite individualized. I quite like. I think it's a really interesting direction to go. It's one that hasn't really been that heavily explored. You've had people that can do mechanics of the games better than others. Like Hundra Moritani has better shipping. You've got Tezia Vernius has more faction manipulation. But you haven't had very many leaders that have their own individualized mechanics, like say a Lasery Kaz did, but obviously with the one step ahead stuff, that was very unique for her. I guess you could say Irulan and Margot Femin for Uprising with getting specific bonuses for hitting faction spots, but nothing really to this particular detail. We'll explore this a little bit more in a moment. Obviously, new cards coming out for addition into your Imperium decks makes sense. New intrigues as well. You'll notice that Peter DeVry's face is actually on this one here, and that ties into his mechanic. Peter actually has his own specific intrigue deck, which is super interesting. We also as well have the Sardaukar commanders as well, which seem to give a variety of running bonuses, I'm guessing kind of similar to kind of the tech tiles of old. And speaking of course, we have to talk about the new techs that are coming out into the game here. Which is something that I honestly didn't expect to see. Truth be told, I was a little bit surprised by this, but I think it's not necessarily a bad idea. I think the techs are definitely a pretty fun aspect of Rise of X for sure. And as I was getting an example too now with that having just come out in Dune Imperium Digital a couple of days or so ago, I was planning to do a stream this evening for Dune Imperium Digital with some Rise of X, probably checking on some of the challenges, maybe some line games. I'm probably still going to be doing that. I imagine a lot of the conversation is going to be dominated by Bloodlines. One thing that is worth noting, though, you can just see at the top here, that it is changing things a little bit here. So rather than having a specific space made for the Uprising board specifically to go to buy techs, any trip to any council spot gives you the ability to buy a tech if you've got the spice for it. And specifically, if you've got the High Council seat, tech tiles cost 1 spice fewer, which I think is maybe a better way of doing it. It does make it a lot more unpredictable to know who's going to grab what techs, and it's going to make it very much more cutthroat potentially. But if you think about it in Uprising specific, because I think this is more tailored towards that, if you think about the whole situation, there aren't that many spots you can go to at the start of the game. You know, you think that you've only got access to 2 spots because you can't go to Mentat because it's Imperial Privilege, you need the Influence, and High Council and Swordmaster, of course, are pretty darn expensive. So I think this possibly is a better way of doing it, just a bit more flexible, maybe a bit of a quality of life change, but looks pretty darn good. Now, we do have a few extra images I just want to show you here that have been posted to our Discord server at Hidden Assets. Link of that in the description below. We do, of course, have a few members of the server that are over at Gen Con this year. I will be honest, I was somewhat tempted to go. I've actually never been at a board game convention before. I have been at conventions, other bits and pieces, and I was partially tempted to go to this one. Unfortunately, I've already had to fund 2 trips to the United States this year, and I kind of didn't really have enough in the bank account to go to a 3rd one, so that's the way it goes. Bit of a shame, perhaps would have been super interesting to do some coverage up there, but it's not a big deal. Regardless, though, we've got some images from Wolfens and Guy over on our Discord. I'd like to thank them for posting them, and we're going to have a quick little look at them to give you a bit more detail. Here's a look at the back of the box, or maybe one of the slips are inside, again giving you a bit more of a detail. The images as we've seen before, you know, looks pretty good to me. I like the box art as well. I don't know if it's just me. I like the box art. I just really like this. There's something really simple but really sleek about this that I just really attracts me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just a fan of big shiny balls. But yes, I just said that on the internet. I'm sure I'm going to regret that one for years. But I really like the box art. I just think it's nice and uncomplicated and really good. So I like the looks of that. Then we've got a few pictures of the leaders in a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go into these into heavy detail because obviously we'll find out more from the developers, obviously in Direwolf Digital. They'll post more information about this as the weeks go. But look at some of the leaders. It is worth noting that all the leaders we've seen are people that have had cards from in before the Imperium deck. So Esmar, Piter, that sort of thing. Chary you've probably seen as well. So we've got Esmar Tuek rated at 1 notch, so simple leader. Tuek Siege, whenever you or a teammate send an agent to Tuek Siege, you get a Solari. So I'm assuming that he brings along with him his own unique space to the board, which is quite interesting. And again, I've got no issues with that. I like the idea of going down these individualized sort of mechanics. I think that's really cool. It doesn't mean that it's exclusive to them, as you'll see. Imagine these are still places that can be used or visited, or mechanics that can be used by your opposition if you let them. But I think it's a really interesting way to kind of bring in more kind of modular mechanics into Uprising. We've already seen, if you think of the contract system, for example, that's already kind of a degree of modularization. I think this is a good way to go ahead and do it. And whenever an opponent sends an agent there, you get an intrigue. So tons of value for you there. His rings among the spike. Place a bonus spice on the seats for you to grab. Or take a bonus spice from a maker board space, which is definitely a bit of a blow to worm-style leaders. Obviously, sometimes they want to try and build up that spice and get some water and just cash it massive. You've seen that a couple of times in the tournament. That could be a way of helping to try and negate that a little bit. Not a worse idea. We got Duncan Idaho, also rated a 1-star leader here. He gets the Swordmaster for 2 less, and it's already been reduced in Uprising, so he can get the Swordmaster for 4 cash. That's wild. He can literally just go, mine, Spice Refinery, Swordmaster. That's pretty wild. That is pretty darn wild. Can't see all of his ring ability here. But yeah, you may take the engine you send and deploy it to conflict as the unit can't be retreated. Right, so you can use an agent for temporary bonus strength, it looks like, which is interesting. We've seen this as a mechanic before, kind of. I believe, actually, no, it was CJ. It was one of his Canleys actually had a mechanic that was very similar to this. I forget which one it was, but he had like a commander ability of a specific troop you could send into a contest of your choice. But if it lost, it would be sent to the Talaxu tanks, and you'd have to pay to get it back, sort of thing. So interesting that that's actually been kind of semi-incorporated. I'm sure we'll take a victory lap over that. We've got the Steersman. Steersman, Yakroon, Yurkun. I wasn't the rest of Arabic, I'm going to be honest here. You start the game with no water and no signet ring, which is wild. However, whenever you gain 3 spice or more in a single turn, which can definitely be done, you get a card draw. But the big thing is plot course, and this is kind of a play on Tesia Vernius's abilities with the Snooper tokens. It's a similar sort of idea. At the game start, you shuffle the navigation cards, which is his own personal deck, and you draw a hand of 5. You place 4 of those down in an order of your choice. And what happens is that each time you reach 2 influence with a faction, you play the next navigation card from left to right, basically. Now, it says 2 influence with a faction. It doesn't have to be a separate one, whereas Tesia's Snoopers required collecting them and being different ones. In this, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to necessarily use that bump on the same faction. If you can find a way to go down and up, maybe with Captured Mentat, for example, to reveal, you could pick off those extra influences and just get them back there. Don't see a reason you couldn't do that. Looks pretty interesting. Difficult, though. That requires a lot of forward planning and probably a bit of luck, too. No signet ring as well. Oof, that's tough. Next up, we got Chary here, who is very interesting. Has our own personalized track kit, kind of a bit of a play off Fader Alpha. Tactician, whenever you retreat or lose any number of troops from the conflict, advance your tactics tokens that many spaces, earning rewards as you reach them. Reset the token after reaching the end of the track. So this is actually not too dissimilar to the Atreides ability in Big Dune, in Big Dune, which we did get a chance to play at the last North Carolina Invitational. CJ definitely enjoyed that a lot there. But the Atreides have an ability where after you lose like so many troops in combat and they get used, you eventually get access to the Kwisatz Haderach. And that was the first thing I saw on the source. I was like, it reminds me of that, and that's super cool. As for the ring here, you can treat any number of your troops with your ring. So Chary is kind of like Ambatuli, but on steroids. And dare I say, when I was suggesting, and I've said in the recent tier listing video for Uprising is, I said that Ambatuli could do with a rework. Something like this is probably not far from what I would have suggested doing. So I don't know where that quite puts her. I don't know if that's really the biggest news here, but it's worth noting. So you can retreat any number of your troops. Any number. That's huge. That's absolutely enormous, the amount of staged operations you can operate against your opponent and just make them commit tons of decisions. I'm just going to pull everyone back. Have fun with that. That's pretty brutal. Or, if you've got 2 influence to the front end, you can pay a water for a double card draw. That is also huge. That is massive Spiceman's Flow buying. That is good flexibility. That is really, really strong. You've got to get that water, but if you're just constantly putting loads of troops and retreating them and getting your water back, that is very significant. So I think that is really, really nasty. That ring could be super awesome. And lastly, the one that fascinates me by the most and takes my most interest is Pite of Rees here, the Twisted Genius. He starts with his own intrigue deck, the Twisted Intrigue deck. You shuffle it and you place it down near you, and at the start of each round, you draw one. That is wild. And these are his own specific intrigues, have their own effects. However, they do count as general intrigue cards and can be stolen at secrets, so your opponents get hold of these. I think that's super awesome, and that makes him, I think, a very dangerous leader and hard to predict. It's something that you'd have to definitely learn what these sort of cards are and what to expect. Very nasty. As for his ring, he gets a troop similar to, what's his called? Gurney Halleck's. However, he cannot deploy it to the conflict, so he's kind of a mix of Gurney Halleck's and Emperor Shaddam's rings here. But I think they, just having more intrigues cards, I think just makes you really hard to play against, and I think that's going to be barrels of fun. Biter here looks really exciting. Esmar, I think just bringing extra board spaces is always definitely interesting as well. Lots of good stuff here, and my general just analysis of what little we have seen so far is very, very positive. I think what I would also say, though, is that this looks to be not a simple expansion, though. You think of, like, the base Dune Imperium when Rise of X came in. Yeah, introduced shipping, introduced unloading, but it was generally fairly consumable. My only thing coming to this is this looks quite a medium to high level of... Well, I wouldn't say high level, it's probably not fair, but definitely a very medium level of complexity here. There's a lot going on. That's the nature of having these individualized mechanics, but I do think it's a good direction to go. And just inherently looking at this, to me, this appeals to me. Something like this, you know, which gives everything its own little bit of bite and makes things a lot kind of a lot funkier maybe in combat. There's going to be maybe a bit of unevenness about it, like there always is. That's the nature of it, but that's Dune Imperium for you. Wacky things do and happen. So we will be keeping an eye for more news from Direwolf via their site, or maybe other bits and pieces that we'll find out. As noted, I will be doing a stream later on this evening on Dune Imperium Digital. I'm sure there'll be buckets of questions on this, and I'll try and answer the best that I can. I'm sure there'll be buckets of speculation on this as well. But my initial thoughts, this looks really cool. And I love the thoughts of this as well. I think this could be very interesting indeed. So very much for watching. Take care, yourselves. We'll see you all later this evening. I'm sure myself and CJ especially, CJ will probably want to have his 2 cents on this as well. Maybe we'll get together and do something a bit more detailed on this, because we were planning to do a an update video or like a podcast on Spy Satellite of what we want to see from a future expansion. Well, work kind of got done for us. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. See you soon.